Hello YouTube, De-bodgery here, aka Richard Gumph on Facebook. Welcome to EV Components Review. I have been looking over the three pictures that I have of the KO Moto Rush controller, which is soon to be released. As far as I know, it's not out yet. If they've posted something after these, I don't know about it. I posted an inconvenient comment on their public Facebook page about shoving screwdrivers into motor windings being a bad thing, but nevertheless there it is on video, and so they blocked me. So if there's other pictures or whatever after this or announcements, I don't know about them because, well, they don't want me to see it. Because, you know, obviously I will have opinions about things, and I will try to do teardowns on things because, well, that's what I do. All right, so the first thing I want to point out here is this shell is probably not the final product. This looks like plastic or cast aluminum to me. I would say probably painted cast aluminum, but I can't be sure. Anyway, it's not machined, other than maybe like the underside of it, which I can't see in the picture. It doesn't look like the shells that you see, like say on the KO Moto website for the Rush controller. You know, this looks like some other material. Like I said, cast aluminum or maybe, you know, ABS plastic, something like that. I don't really know that, but yeah, it doesn't look machined. Let's just put it that way. And like my KO Pro, well, that looks like it's machined inside and out, and this doesn't look like that at all. That looks like I said, plastic or casting. Okay, so you are looking at the Rush logic board that I snagged off of the KO Moto public Facebook page a couple weeks ago before they blocked me. Yeah, and I've got a couple more pictures too that were what they posted out there. Okay, so the first things I want you to notice is there are some differences here that are, some of them are small, some of them more important than, like, say, what you see on the F-Spec or the KO Pro controller. All right, the capacitors, for example, they are not going to change power output in any way. All they're going to do is affect the amount of ripple filtering you get, and that's it. They have nothing to do with current output, all right? Nothing. So, like on the F-Spec and the KO Pro controllers, you see some different capacitors. That does not affect current output of the controller in any way, shape, or form. All it does is clean up DC noise a little bit, and that's all it does. So when you buy an F-Spec and you are thinking, oh my God, I've got this better controller and so on, you have bought a KO Pro. They literally have the same logic board. They literally have almost exactly the same, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. They have almost exactly the same logic board with the exception of the capacitors. And the power stage is in fact exactly the same. You are buying the same controller with slightly better ripple filtering, and that's all you're buying. The only other thing that you're getting that's different is a current limit that's in the firmware in the CPU. That's the differences between the F-Spec and the KO Pro, is some capacitors and a current limit. Otherwise, they are physically identical in every way. There is no difference between those two controllers. In fact, if you would set the current limit higher in the KO Pro, it would perform exactly like the F-Spec, because they are, in fact, exactly the same. All right, sorry for the little bit of a tangent there. Let's get back to this. Okay, so the first thing I want to point out, and I will zoom in some more. Oh, let me make this bigger. There we go. And I apologize for the resolution of the picture, but this is what KO Moto produced and put out there on their public Facebook forum, and so it is what it is. Okay, you are looking at the DC electronics here. So you have one inductor and one buck chip and some capacitors and things. So that's going to be your main DC to DC converter for taking battery voltage and dropping it down to basically 12 volts. Right here to the left of it, you have a linear voltage regulator. So the only thing, I can't see the part number on it, but the only thing that would ever probably be is a 5-volt linear regulator. So probably a 7805 linear regulator is most likely what that is. So that costs a little bit less money than does a second DC to DC converter does, which they used to have on here for 5 volts, and now they've changed it over for a linear regulator. So a bit of a cost savings right there for just changing out one thing to another. Me personally, I like DC to DC regulators. There's good reasons for that. But, you know, hey, I have already apologized about the 1117, which is over here, because in fact that's a fairly common thing on a lot of controllers, that they use that for 3.3 volt regulation for the CPU and probably also for the Bluetooth module, which would be sitting right here. There may be some differences there. I can't be sure because this looks like a little vertical thing that sticks up, and I don't know what that's about because previously that was like 4 pins sticking up, or 4 pins sticking up. And now it looks like it's like a little card edge of some kind. I don't know if they've changed the Bluetooth module or something like that, but that's where the Bluetooth module is going to go, is right there. That's the same layout as it is on the F-Spec and the KO Pro. So why would they move it here? That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, in fact, other things are the same. Like you can see right here, there's those 4 little solder bridges. You know, there's some kind of a jumper thing for something. I don't know what they do. But yeah, those are in the exact same place on the KO Pro and the F-Spec logic board. You know, this through-hole chip right here, which they've got the legs bent over to make a surface mount, that's there. This chip here, which I don't know what it does, again, that's all there on the KO Pro and the F-Spec as well. In fact, this chip right here, which on mine has obviously been replaced with another one. You know, my board's a repair and it should be brand new. You know, that's in the same place. So yeah, there's a lot of things here that are exactly like they are on the F-Spec and the KO Pro. There are some exceptions. So the first thing I want to point out is you can see right up here, there's these 2 chips and there's 2 here. And let me slide this over a skosh. And there's 2 here. So these are your MOSFET drivers. We already know, because they announced it, that this is a 48 MOSFET controller. Well, the MOSFET driver chip that's in the F-Spec and the KO Pro, it can't drive 48 MOSFETs. It just doesn't have the current capability for it. So what they have done is they've used 2 here and 2 here and 2 here. So you have basically 2 sets of 24 MOSFETs. And they are half getting driven by this one and half driven by that one for that phase, and the same here for here, and the same there for the third phase. So literally you've got 2 MOSFET drivers per phase driving all 48 MOSFETs, and they're split up 24 per driver. That's the only thing that can explain what these are for. Anyway, they're identical chips. It's really blurry, but you can see the part number on both of those, and it's the same thing. So yes, that's obviously what they are. All right. Let's move over here, squish more. All right, so this is something that I have looked at many times and thought, what on earth are they doing? Again, you can see they've got 2 current filters on here, or sensors rather, not a third one. So, you know, again, it's the same thing that KO has always done. 2 out of the 3 of them get current sensing of the phases, and the third one does not. The locations of things is a little bit different, but that's pretty much it. Otherwise, this is a KO Pro and a F-Spec logic board with some additional things like some extra MOSFET gate drivers and changing the DC to DC out for a linear regulator and a couple of little fiddly things. Yeah, so these sleeves right here. So keep in mind, there's your 3 phases, and there's battery minus and there's battery plus. Why would you put those on there? Why would you put an extra part on something? And yeah, you know, KO, they cheap things out a lot. I've said that before, and, well, they do. And this is something that you're not going to add an extra part if you don't have to. You know, and they're certainly not going to do it. So why would you add an extra part? That's extra cost. That's extra manufacturing. That's a thing that you don't need to have. So just keep those sleeves in mind. You know, and you can see that they make physical contact to the brass of the stud, you know, the standoff, but they're clearly able to slide around them in some way. You know, they're larger in diameter inside than is the stud diameter, so they can clearly slide in and off of them, and they don't like tightly fit around them. It's not machined from one part. That's obvious. It's 2 pieces. So yeah, why? What's the point of those things? All right, so let's look at the next picture. And I've only got 3. All right, so here is that aluminum plate. And I saw that and I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and I thought, there is absolutely no logical reason to have aluminum plate in the middle of a controller. And yet it's in there. And the next picture shows it's in there. But yet, nevertheless, here is this aluminum plate in there. Okay, so again, why would you make a part that serves no purpose? If you look at the KO Pro or the F-Spec or like the X9000, you have the metal core printed circuit board stuck right down to the heatsink, and then the logic board is screwed down to that. So it's a very common design, and there is absolutely no reason whatsoever to have an aluminum plate in the middle of your controller. It serves no purpose. Except for here, it does serve a purpose, and I'll get to that. So here it is. It's there, and they've shown it in their own pictures, and that's what this is. I just borrowed them off of the KO Moto public Facebook page. All right. So here is the third picture. And let's bring that in. All right. Let's bring that just a skosh. Okay. So several details here. You can see brass studs. You can see pin headers. And both of those have 6 pins in them. And you can see all this stuff coming up through the aluminum plate, which is now stuck down over top of something, right? Well, if you look at these brass studs and those 6-pin headers, those are all in the same positions as they are in the KO Pro and the F-Spec controllers. There is a difference, but it's not a really big one. There is another cylinder right over here on the KO Pro and the F-Spec boards that is missing here. I don't know if they made a mistake or they're going to add it later or something like that. Yeah, that one thing is not here. Otherwise, this is basically the exact same orientation for everything that you'll see in the KO Pro and the F-Spec power stage. With the exception that rather than there being 3 hollow cylinders here, instead you have 3 standoffs. Otherwise, everything here is exactly the same spots as they are in an F-Spec/KO Pro power stage. Anyway, yeah, there's clearly something underneath that aluminum plate. Clearly there is. You see stuff coming up through it. There is something underneath there, and I'm just going to call it what it is. That is a KO Pro/F-Spec power stage with a couple of little changes to it. Otherwise, it's the same thing. This is my opinion. And again, if you look at this shell, this doesn't look like machined aluminum. It looks like plastic or cast aluminum. Anyway, it's a mock-up. I'm pretty sure of that. That's not the real shell that's going to go to these things. It doesn't look like the shell that you see in the KO Moto website. All right, now let's go back to that first picture. This one, and bring her back in again. Yeah, these are little pictures. There we go. Okay, so remember these little sleeves? You can see them there, all around those 5 studs. They do something. They wouldn't be there for no reason. Now I'm going to zoom in some more, because KO gave away some secrets here. All right, so if you look right there, it says KO 3.1-2. And you saw the aluminum plate. It wasn't on there. It was simply not there. What you're looking at is a metal core printed circuit board. You're seeing the edge of it. And right here, you can see a notch out of it. This right here, this is a lip on the controller shell, and the silicone gasket fits inside there. But you can see the edge behind it of the metal core printed circuit board. Over here, you can see a hole. If we go this way, you can see a hole. A little bit further, you see a hole. So now, let's go back over to that picture right there again, so you can see what we're looking at. Here's your 3 holes, and you don't see that number listed there at all. It's not there. It's not over here either. It's just not there. Why? Because that's a metal core printed circuit board stuck down on top of this aluminum plate. Let's go back to that other picture again. Zoom that back in again. Okay. All right, so I've brought up these brass sleeves on here several times now, and there's a reason why I do. It's because those are soldered down to this center layer metal core printed circuit board, which is sandwiched in on top of the bottommost metal core printed circuit board, which is actually up against the heatsink. And those sleeves right there, they transfer current from that middle plane to those brass studs. That's what they are for. And also, like in these positions right here, those do the same thing. There is a sleeve that's very much like what you see on like the KO Pro or the F-Spec controller. It's hollow, and that sandwiches the underside of the logic board to that metal core printed circuit board that's right underneath it. And the center stud, which is right here, here, and here, that goes all the way through down to the bottommost power stage. All right, one last little detail here, and then I'm done. So you'll notice that there are pins in those connectors. but there's nothing here. And that's because those connectors aren't there. They just, this is a prototype. This is, something for marketing or whatever. First one off the production run, it's not finished yet. Anyway, there'll be connectors here, and they're just simply not here yet. Same thing for the Bluetooth module, which isn't there. So yeah, no big deal about that, but there's going to be connectors there, and that's for a really good reason. So these ones here, I want you to notice the distance from there to that stud. And let's go back to this other picture, this one right here. Look at something else. And zoom right in. Okay, notice the distance from these pins to here. It is significantly further, about twice the distance in fact, and it's because these sets of pins go up to those empty sets of solder pads that will get connectors on them. And the other set, which you saw already, filling holes in connectors, go back to the other picture and zoom back in. See, those are much closer to the studs. Those are much closer. Those ones go from the metal core printed circuit board, that middle stage, to these connectors. And furthermore, the bottom stage, which is probably, in my opinion, I don't know this as fact, this is pure speculation at this point, is probably the exact same power stage that you see in the KO Pro and the F-Spec, with some very small differences, basically standoffs, and one missing sleeve kind of piece of brass on it. Otherwise, it's probably the exact same thing. And then the middle stage is almost exactly the same thing, with the exception that it has larger holes in it, so that these brass standoffs can pass through it, and then they have these brass sleeves soldered down to it. And then all that stuff gets sandwiched together by the screws. So you have a 48 volt controller, or 48 MOSFET controller, volt, whatever, 48 MOSFET controller, but you have it built into two power stages, an upper one and a lower one. And that's how this works, in my opinion. So anyway, that is pretty much everything I wanted to show. And as you can see, there's that MCPCB in there, and there's this number on there, KO3.1-2, and that comes all the way over here. You can see it all the way over to there. There is a board in there on top of that aluminum plate, and that is inside, in the middle of the Rush controller. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong. Feel free to tell me I'm completely delusional. Agree with me. I have basically just observed this, and I think I'm right, but, hey, I could be wrong. So let me know what you think, folks. And if people were speculating and you were wondering how this all worked, well, maybe I've cleared some things up for you. Anyway, let me know, folks.